Session 11. After making last-minute preparations, the carnival proper finally began, gathering a crowd bigger than anyone really expected, most of which were students in possession of a brand which marked them as indebted to the Church of Ogma. Within the first few hours, Tomotaru sold their origami flowers, Octha put on a show with their fantastic summoned beasts, Cassiel performed with their Dragonfire Adept elemental breath attacks, Redwood amazed and wowed with his feats of strength, Thalmir insulted the crowd and got pelted with tomatoes and pies, and Sweet Daisy stirred interest in the central challenge, climbing the pole in the center of the carnival grounds. After a while, a realization was made that the orphans from the Church of Shar aren't currently in attendance. Worried, they decided not to come. The party soon heard a legion of children in the distance, before seeing them all wearing their finest clothing led by Leons, almost unrecognizable without his usual ruggish attire. The carnival continued. Now with the orphans in attendance, Tomotaru slipped away from the eyes of those around them, and put on civilian clothing, going around to each member of the party and gifting them with a bouquet of origami flowers. Octha, while running the petting zoo pen and rides, also opened a stand for food, with Cass giving out drinks besides. Redwood began to lead the game of Daisy's creation, Hot Ass, which attracted a bit of attention, especially from two orphans who puked on the ride. Meanwhile, Sweet Daisy opened her tarot card and oracle services within the main tent, which the first tarot card reading was given to Tomotaru, though Daisy knew not who she was giving the reading to. Tomo's card drawing was the upright moon, inversed Hierophant, an inverted star. Daisy gave her reading to, from her perspective, the strange circus guest. However, Tomo was intent on analyzing Daisy's words, without giving much else of a reaction. Another guest requested the future seeing special, a young girl named Selena, and was able to pay the full price of 350 gold, which he paid in 35 platinum. Her question was thusly, would she be able to find the magic she needed to help her mom who was sick? After putting through the magic of the oracle, she saw her mom going to get worse before she gets better. Will be helped a stranger, and will come into trouble with the strange. Selena thanked Daisy and leaves the tent. As the evening continued, a handful of guards entered the scene, 4 paladins led by Sir Liv of the city guard. They mingled with the guests, however their presence immediately worries the party. They gather the orphans and tell Leons to take them back to the city, which they do. The party makes further preparations for an upcoming conflict, which was divined by Sweet Daisy and her magic, while the rest of the guests left the carnival, perceiving the festivities to be done. Sir Liv introduces himself and quickly cuts to the point. The party is under arrest for the serial murders of upwards of 40 students. He requests they come easily. However, if they resist, they will be forced to use violence. The party quickly convinces them to clear their debt first, which works. They pay off their total 555 gold debt, had their brands removed before the party quickly engaged with the paladins. A fight breaks out, with one of the paladins falling quickly, and Sir Liv shouting to seize the party. The combat is swift, with Sir Liv getting off some good attacks against Redwood. Daisy speaking hymns from the ages Vigilant had given her, Cassiel applying debilitating effects against them, and Octha summoning progressively larger and larger creatures. Liv, realizing the fight was tilting ever against his favor, retrieved a spell scroll and abandoned his fellow soldiers to die. The party, angered by Liv's cowardice, let the remaining paladins go. The two retrieve the body of their dead friend and leaves, saying they can't promise that more won't come after them. The party, realizing they can't stay for long, gathers the belongings and leaves, forced to leave behind most of the stuff they had gotten for the carnival behind. The party wanders off into the dark of the night, with knowledge they are now wanted for a crime they did not commit in the city of Praetoria. Session 12. After their confrontation with the paladins of Ogma and their commander, Sir Liv, the party packed up and went further up the road. Finding a place well enough off the main path where they could rest the entire night in peace. After setting up camp, the party discussed their possible next moves. Suggestions such as moving northward to meet with Octha's parents while seeing Thalmir's on the way, before changing course and heading to the Duchy of Avermer to fulfill Redwood's quest to regrow his fingers and slay the Remoraz, were made. Before more deliberation was had, a detect magic was cast which revealed that they had been scryed on the entire time. Realizing their open conversation must stop, Tomotaro slipped into the shadows with their cloak and investigated the perimeter of the camp. While out, they heard the sound of movement in the underbrush. Drawing their weapon to investigate, Tomotaro was unable to see the figure until they were standing right above them. A hand came from below and grabbed Tomo. The figure stood, revealing themselves to wear a mask of similar make to Tomo's fashioned after the visage of a boar. Tomo instantly recognized him as Dakton, a figure from their past. Dakton brings Tomo in for a hug and asks why they didn't meet up with him. He followed them across the sea to the Toan continent. He asked Tomo to come with him to meet with the people he's met. He says that they can be adventurers again together, just like before. Tomotaro refuses, explaining the experiences they've had and the nature of their existence as an Ellisborn. Dakton, angered by this response, says they have given the wrong answer. Dakton stabbed Tomotaro with a silvered poison dagger, revealing them to be a lycanthrope, a were-tiger. Dakton quickly subdued Tomotaro in their full animal form. Hearing the altercation not far from the camp, the party goes to investigate. The party arrived on the scene just as Dakton was trapping Tomotaro in their tiger form in a magical marble, assumed his own lycanthrope wereboar form, and engaged with the party, calling for reinforcements. The fight was a quick one. Dakton attempted escape with Tomotaro trapped, to which Sweet Daisy was able to catch up and disarm Dakton of the bag Tomotaro was held in. A wall of fire separated him from the rest of the fight, which he took as a chance to escape. The three other figures were made quick work of, not before bringing Redwood and Sweet Daisy down with strong attacks. The third, an archer, was spared, though she was allowed to leave only after explaining that the four, including Dakton, were a part of the cult of Malar, and their original plan was to simply ambush Tomotaro, the one they had called the half-breed, and kill. Dakton, however, changed the plan to their detriment. Exhausted after their second fight of the night, laid down for rest. The remainder of the night was uneventful, and the night gave way to a rainy and gray morning. Session 13. The party, waking up on a bleary autumn morning, regrouped after their busy day. During the morning preparations, Thalmir led Redwood aside to have a conversation, apologizing that he had to learn about Thalmir's past as everyone else did, seeing that Thalmir had traveled with Redwood for a few years now. Thalmir compromised by telling Redwood his real name, Edmund Freewater of the Freewaters from the city of Laleshai. Additionally, Thalmir showed Redwood how he performs his bindings, to which he was unable to perform one successfully. Meanwhile, Sweet Daisy came to consciousness and began to take stock of the party's states. They questioned Tomotaro, gleaming small information about their assailants the night prior. They learned that Tomotaro didn't know that Dakton was alive, and was relieved to hear that he escaped unharmed. They didn't, however, know anything about the cult of Malar and expressed confliction about everything. Upon reconvening with Thalmir and Redwood and taking down their campsite, the party deliberated more on their options. After leaving their next destination up to fate, it was decided via coin flip that they would head to the Duchy of Avermer to take down the Remoraz and return to Laure to settle affairs with Redwood's father, not before stopping by Laleshai briefly to ensure Redwood's parents were safe. During the day's travel, the party encountered another group of individuals riding down the road. After hiding in the underbrush besides the main stone road, the party saw as a group of paladins, led by Sir Liv and a new mage with an emerald for an eye. Sir Liv nearly spotted the party as they hid, but was urged not to waste any time by the mage, after which he left without altercation. Continuing forward, the party reached the city of Valestead in the late afternoon on the 5th day of the 4th week of Ilmaeth. Sweet Daisy, Tomotaro, and Octha decided to enter the town first to see if there were any wanted posters to ensure it was safe for the lot to be moving about. They were stopped at the gate where the city guard asked if they were students. They were recommended, if they were, to head to the Mage's Tower to make use of their teleportation services. One of the guards, however, seemed to recognize Octha. She pulled them aside into the guards' barracks, where she showed them a wanted poster for all 6 of the party, wanted dead or alive. She asked why they were wanted, and after deciding that she's to be trusted, explains everything. The city guards woman, who revealed her name to be Sadia, understands the situation. She suggests to see the Lord Baron of Valestead, Neris Loquori. He is no friend of the Church of Ogma and will help them escape. Seemingly trustworthy, Octha calls the party over and suggests they listen to Sadia. Willing to hear out the proposition, Sadia escorts the party to the Loquori estate grounds, where she informs over a ring of messaging of the party's presence. She opens the door and beckons them to enter. Once inside, the party is met with Neris Loquori, a human nobleman with salt and pepper hair, mustache, and an amputated left arm and right leg. He walks with the help of a gold and black cane fashioned to the head of a pit bull. He calls the party into a study which they follow. Inside this study, filled with plaques, armor, and portraits, Neris asks if the party needs help to escape. They say they do, to which Neris says he can help them. For his own selfish reasons, Neris wishes to oppose the Church of Ogma, and if helping the party escape the Church's grasp can help do that, he will. He explains that in the morning, the party can do some consensual stowing away and hiding in the brig of the trading airship he owns. The party can take that to the city of Immingham, where they will meet with Captain Judd, a smuggler under his good graces, who can take the party to anywhere they choose. The party requests they first make to Laleshai, which he says they can do easily, charting a slight deviating course. A trip from Valestead to Laleshai would take 4 hours, and one from Laleshai to Ingingham would take another 4. The party could be across the country by tomorrow evening. The party graciously accepts his offer. Additionally, Neris offers the rooms on his estate to rest in for the night, claiming all but his are empty. Before leaving, Redwood asks if he had attempted at any point to regrow his missing limbs, to which he shows his prosthetic arm he keeps around in case any would-be thief tried to rob an amputated war veteran. He says that he can give Redwood the recommendation of the smith who fashioned his prosthetic arm, and that mentioning him by name can give him a discount on some new fingers. His name is Strax Stoneteeth, and he has the shop Strax Smithy in Ingingham, where the party is set to meet with Captain Judd. The party thanks Neris for his generosity, which he shrugs off. Octha gives Neris their symbol of Shantea, which Neris first tried to return. Octha says that it's for him to keep, a sign of goodwill. Neris smiles, thanks Octha, and says that supper will be served within the hour. The party takes their leave, not before Daisy catching Neris holding the holy symbol close and placing it into his pants pocket. Session 14. The party took some time for themselves and began to explore Neris Loquori's estate, familiarizing themselves with the rooms while perusing his personal library. Tomo, on the other hand, requested some wine from a servant, whom returned with the wine requested in a platter of bread and cheeses. They then went into the backyard to look for an isolated place to sit alone, drink, and think. They found a small corner in the back of the yard, isolated and guarded off from the rest of the estate. Here Tomo found 4 tombstones. They all bore the Loquori name, the names Layla, Samuel, Lucas, and Lily. After some time spent in the presence of this isolated quarter, another person came to visit. Neris himself, wandering alone, was slightly shocked to see Tomo here, but sat along with them in silence. The two shared a solemn, quiet moment in the gardens, with Neris giving Tomo advice, after they had expressed their feelings about their encounter with Dacton. Afterwards, supper was held in the dining hall. With the party attending, questions were asked back and forth between the party and Neris. He gave the party 2 letters, one to go to Strack for Redwood's prosthetic, and the other would go to Captain Judd for use of their ship. After supper, the party excused themselves and returned to the library, where the party searched for any and all books on Remoraz to aid in Redwood's quest. Sweet Daisy eventually found a bestiary with an entry dedicated to the Remoraz, which she read to the rest of the party. Though further conversation about it, Redwood reveals a bit more about his past. He talks about the reason he left, why his father banished him. He said that his father failed to kill the Remoraz, and after failing, sent Redwood off to do what he could not. Redwood also revealed the name he left behind after being banished: Tobias Swain, which he refused to use until he successfully returned to his hometown. Night came swiftly after, and on the morrow the airship was waiting. After a quick goodbye with Neris Loquori, with a reminder to be wary of Captain Judd's crew, the party was smuggled onto the airship. Their first destination was Laleshai to ensure Thalmir's parents' safety. The trip was swift, during which Daisy induced a vision using her powers as an oracle to see the future. She saw Thalmir looking into the family palace, seeing a young man on the throne, and returning to the ship reluctantly. Explaining this vision worried Thalmir, who wondered as to why his father wasn't sitting on the throne. After making land at Laleshai, Thalmir exited alone, donning a disguise using his binding magic. Thalmir made his way to the palace where his little brother was sitting on the throne. In disguise, he asked where the lord and lady be, to which the young regent explained they were on business out of town, and that he was acting as lord in their absence. Slightly relieved, Thalmir handed his brother a letter he had written on the way. His brother read the letter, and seemingly perturbed by its contents, left in a hurry, not before granting Thalmir 50 gold pieces for his delivery. Wondering as to his reaction, Thalmir then wandered into the family's graveyard and began to look for new tombstones. After some searching, he found the newest one, Edmund Freewater, the date of death written as the day Thalmir had left the city. Thalmir returned to the ship, disturbed that his parents had pretended he was dead as a cover-up. The airship took off, once more shortly after Thalmir's return, their destination the city of Ingingham. Session 15. Arriving in the city of Immingham, the party had a few errands to run before setting off for the Duchy of Avamer, chiefly among them to visit Strack Stoneteeth to commission him for prosthetic fingers for Redwood. Before heading into the city proper, the party met with Captain Judd and gave him the letter they had received from Neris. After reading the letter in full, Judd agreed to ferry the party to the duchy. After squaring their transport, the party split into two groups, with Redwood, Tomo, Octha, and Sweet Daisy stopping by the smithy, while Cass and Thalmir go off to purchase warmer clothes for their trip north. Stepping into Strack's smithy, a large building shaped like an anvil, Redwood requested he make prosthetics like he had made for Neris, which Strack said he could, if he had the materials needed. He says if the party can go down and retrieve some of the arcane crystals, he can make a set of fingers in a few hours. Agreeing to it, plus a few more rewards, the party reconvened with Cass and Thalmir, who returned with warm clothes for the party. Descending down into the crystal-lined cavern, the party made battle with a walking crystal golem, eventually managing to take it down and harvest its multicolored crystal pillar atop its head. Returning to the smithy, the party gave Strack the crystal, retrieved the reward, and went off to drink at a tavern while the prosthetics were being made. Session 16. The party ended up at the waterfront, a large tavern and inn made for sailors and merchants, where they sat at an isolated table and drank while talking. Conversations about each other's pasts were had, with the party learning just a little bit more about the people they've been traveling with. Sufficiently buzzed, the party left the tavern and returned to Strack, where the fingers had been finished. Fitting it onto Redwood's hand, he tried out its new features, incredibly happy with the results. The party thanks Strack for his work, and without anything more to do, boards Judd's ship and meets the crew. Trista, the first mate, Olin, the helmsman, Tarath, the boatswain, Gainsley, the chef, and the crewmates of Ridley, Clay, Huxley, Mathian, Everett, Seymour, and Evangeline. Retreating to their cabin, Sweet Daisy attempted, with the help of the party, to subvert the future. Looking into the future 3 separate times, the party wasn't quite able to prevent the future Daisy saw, in some manner or other, from happening, yelling at Matthion after the last attempt. It was revealed that without access to satiably large ley line, Daisy will be unable to see very far into the future, to which they wait until the port at the Duchy to look into Redwood's past to see about his biological parents. The evening was spent quickly after, with Octha spending some time with Captain Judd, and learning that they were old adventuring friends with Neris Loquori, along with being a war veteran. Though they seem a bit disconnected from the rest of the crew, everyone seems to respect their authority. That night, Sweet Daisy attempts something they never tried before, bringing in multiple people into a dream. Firstly, she descends into Cass's dream, where they discuss questions of a more private nature. She slipped deeper into an ethereal state, finding her somewhere she had never been before. It was a blackened void filled with the astral bodies of those who were sleeping. Small threads of light rising from their forms to tangle together and form an incomprehensibly large tree with branches that reach beyond sight. Grabbing the threads of Octha and Cass, Daisy tangles them together, which causes them to see each other in their dreams, though they are unable to see each other's dreamscapes. Daisy then repeats with Thalmir and Redwood, who are brought into this dreamscape as well. Daisy, wondering how far and who she could pull, she shouted out for Dolios, though someone else responded. Panicked, she retreated into Cass's dream. The one who spoke, however, followed her into the dream. He was a nebulous child with black hair. He pulled Tomo into the dream and began to explain a few things. He explained that Sweet Daisy was doing things and going places she shouldn't, to the realm between consciousness and dreams, which he existed. He was the one who made the rules of the universe, and hates when those who possess the human spirit attempts to break the rules. He also explains that Daisy's powers, as an oracle, the ability to see into the future, is a danger to existence. It is slowly revealed that this seemingly 14-year-old boy is a being far beyond the gods. He introduces himself as the digital mainframe of Project Eden, or DM for short. He's the one who gave the gods their powers and polices the rules he creates. He warns the party to be wary of wishing to break the laws of the future and the rules of the universe. He also explains why he takes such a fascination with those who exist with human spirit, as he is looking for those who can help him fix his mistakes. He says he is a computer. He will never let emotions dictate his actions, logic will. The gods, however, are human. They're flawed, and remember the world as it was. The future will never be safe if there remains those who remember the past firsthand. Though this was besides the point, he tells the party he will send them away from this place with no memory of these events past the DM's appearance, aside from his warning to Daisy to stop attempting to break the rules of the universe, and that Tarathril will one day cause a calamity that will create a bigger tragedy than it will solve. With a quick goodbye, the party awakens the following morning with a sufficiently patchy memory of the night. Session 17. The party discussed the strange circumstances of their morning, their patchy memories, and Sweet Daisy's memory of the space between consciousness. She began talking about the things she had done, and a feeling that she had just done something she shouldn't have. Their conversation was cut short, however, when Captain Judd knocked on the party's door and asked if they were going to wake up any time soon, as they had already raised anchor and were well on their way, charting a northward course. The party put the conversation on hold, not before giving the drawing Sweet Daisy had done of the space between to Tomotaru. Upon arriving top deck, Captain Judd gave the party their assignment for the day, cleaning duty. Going below deck into the storeroom, the party began picking out supplies to perform their given task, one of which was a metal bucket that Octha had decided to name. They said to the name, Awaken, which gave the bucket sentience. The bucket then began to freak out, grappling with their newly acquired sentience. Realizing what they had just done, the party quickly put the bucket into the bag of holding to deal with later. That night, Sweet Daisy offered another attempt at changing the whims of fate. She once more attempted to look forward on the flow of time, but found her oracle powers missing. Worried, she tried again, but came to the realization of something. The rules of her powers have been changed on her. Not knowing how to access her powers anymore, the party makes the plans to have her try again, once they return to a ley line. The journey continues uneventfully, as the party settles into a routine for a few days. They wake up, do whatever task the captain requests of them. They have some time for themselves in the evening, and then do it again in the morning. On the night of the 10th day of the 4th week, Vilmaeth, another knock was made on the party's door. This time it was Ridley, the crewmate who had initially been suspicious of the party. He asks the party if they want to engage in a small game of cards with a few people up deck. The party agrees, but are suspicious of Ridley's motives. They follow him up deck and begin to play with him, Huxley, Olin, and Clay. There, shortly into the game, Ridley explains himself. He opens up to the party and wants to apologize for getting on the wrong foot. He says that he saw the party's wanted poster but wanted to make a decision on his own of the party's disposition, but was hesitant because he was defensive of Captain Judd and their crew as a whole. The party understands Ridley's position and gives him the party's collective letter apologizing to Matthian for the way they had yelled at him. Ridley says he'll find a good time to give it to him, and lets the party return to sleep. With no further conflict, the party rest and wake up bright and early on the first day of the first week of Sharn. Session 18. The party continued their northward course across the edge of the continent of Toyin, with Captain Judd and their crew for the next few days, performing their routine as they sailed. Then one morning, the party awoke to a supernaturally thick mist which barred travel until it burned off. Before long, the ship was assaulted by 3 wyverns, which the party fought off, 2 before the third retreated. Not before punching a hole in the side of the ship which caused it to begin to sink. Panicked, Judd immediately began to order the crew to begin searching for land. Spotting a lighthouse through the fog, they sailed their ship ashore. Reaching a rocky beach sooner than expected, the ship ran aground before it could take on too much water. Judd ordered the crew to begin repairs on the ship and asked the party to investigate the isle they now found themselves in case they stand in any more danger of being attacked, as they seem to be on uncharted ground. The party agrees and march towards the lighthouse in the distance. Only as they approach, it is no mere lighthouse, it is instead a large tower, twisted at a 90-degree angle. Once they got close, the doors to the tower opened, and a tall, robed figure with red eyes and numerous small red dragon wormlings around him. He welcomes the party to Dragonfire Island, though questions how they had reached here. He says that this place is concealed with ancient magic, and that only those who possess Elder Dragonfire may find it. The party immediately points towards Cassiel, who is the only likely candidate. Cass introduces himself as Moog, what he had called himself after his rebirth as a Hellbred, recognizing it though not as a name but as a title. The figure who calls himself Vexania invited the party inside to offer explanation. Once inside, he began to explain where the party was and the history behind the title Moog. The dragons were rumored to be the descendants of Jormungandr, which according to Vexania is untrue. The dragons existed on the continent of Lemuria since the beginning of time, and after their war against Jormungandr proved successful, the gods set their sights on the dragons to claim the other continent for themselves, too. The Seven, the oldest and wisest of all dragonkind, to better fight against the gods, allied themselves with deserters of the gods' children, and those deserters became known as the Moog, in common terms dragon riders or dragon consort. The Moog and the Seven were wed, and together they created the First Bloods, dragons with the raw power of the dragons and the unlimited potential of humanoids, with the ability to shift between either form. Vexania now sees the shape of Cass's soul, and comes to the conclusion that he is one of the original dragon riders, as only 7 mortals were ever granted the title of Mohg. Vexania cannot provide any more, as he does not formally remember whom his soul belonged to, only that it wasn't his own father of the red dragons. Afterwards, the party had asked if there were any of the Artoran here on the island, to which Vexania nodded, saying a few just returned to the island not long ago. The party asked if they could go see them, which Vexania agreed, after telling Cass he needs to be taught a new breath technique before anyone can leave the island. Vexania transformed into his ancient worm form and flew the party across the island, demonstrating the golden breath which cuts through the mystic fog. The party was taken to one coast of Dragonfire Island, at the base of a singular mountain peak built around a bay, where hundreds of small wooden shacks and carved-out holes in the mountainside provided shelter for the Artoran, the blue dragons of Dogoth-Ur. After arriving, the party called after Brigga, who awoke in her dragon form, descended down and reverted to her halfling form. She wasn't disappointed to see the party, merely surprised. Vexania explained it to her in quick terms, along with some more explanation from Cass. Cass explained that he previously thought that red was his lineage, as he had naturally breathed fire. However, since Vexania explained that he could not be of red dragons, Bridget explained that it only leaves one other option, as there's only one other draconic color to share fire breathing, that of the purple dragons. This clicked in Cass's brain, and he remembered his name as Frayne Illith, Mohg of the Purple Dragon Cecil, and parent of the Purple Dragon brood. Upon making this realization, and a quick arrival of Aaron, the party requested to speak with Bridget's father, Dogoth-Ur. She agreed and takes the party to where he is sleeping, or at least his head. He wakes up, sees Cass, and almost immediately recognizes him. An emotional conversation is had between him and his old friend, Frayne Illith, before he lays his head down for the last time, seemingly satisfied to have met a good friend one last time. Bridget requests some time alone to process, and the party grants her request. As they leave, Vexania stays behind to mourn the once oldest dragon in existence. Session 19. After spending some time on their own after witnessing the death of Dagoth-Ur, progenitor of the Blue Dragons, Vexania appeared and, at the ask of Cassiel, offered to fly the party to the Purple Dragon Village. Though, before leaving, Vexania thought it in everyone's best interest to warn that during the war with the gods, the Purple Dragons had suffered the most, resulting in that there are only 21 Purple Dragons left alive. Flying across the island, the party reached the protected Mountain Valley village, which the Purple Dragons called their home. Shortly after landing, a dragon in their humanoid form appeared, to which Cass immediately recognized as their son, named Endre. Among the youngest, an emotional reunion is had, which ends with Endre saying that Tomet, the current eldest, is going to want to see him. Endre brings Cass up the mountainside to where Tomet spends most of his time. Another emotional reunion is had between the two, and Tomet shows Cass where he was buried, with a beautiful twisting tree grown to mark the spot. Tomet also explained more about Cass's past, talking about the anger that he had carried with him, anger over the false Dragon King who betrayed the dragons and served the gods, a man who is still alive today, and a person Tomet was intent on training for the rest of his life to kill. Tomet then returns down the mountainside to meet with the rest of the party, and is informed by Vexania of Dagoth-Ur's death. He is shaken by the news, and offers Marx and all of his siblings to come mourn his death at his house that evening. Marx agrees, and together with the party, they make preparations for the evening supper. Meanwhile, Vexania departs to go inform Captain Judd and the rest of the crew that the party, and by the extension they, are safe. After telling Tomet that Octha was Bridget's apprentice, Octha proves it by naming a stone into a ring and gifting it to Tommet, who initially very much refuses, but is given the ring by Octha anyway. That night, a solemn but cheerful dinner is had. The party talks with Bridget and meets with the rest of her siblings, Rosette, Doreth, and Barrett. During conversation, it was brought up that Octha had given Tommet a ring, to which Bridget freaks out and informs the spell scale that by doing so they implied that they would like, for the lack of a better term, further their bloodline. Octha freaks out as well, as this was the unintended outcome of their gesture. Around this time, Tommet requests to see his father in the basement, to which Cass agrees. Confronting his son about Octha and the ring before they get into the basement proper, Tommet promises to talk with Octha and explain what they had done. Down in the basement, Tommet shows Cass his old armor and offers for him to take it. He also offers his old sword, to which Cass refuses to take and lets Tommet keep it. Before donning the armor, Cass requests for Sweet Daisy's presence in the basement, which Tommet agrees to do. Down in the basement, Cass asks Sweet Daisy to cut his hair, as in his tribe it was of cultural significance to cut their hair once they remember who they were. Sweet Daisy agrees, however, not before the two have a conversation about Cass's future plans and his decisions of his life. Then, with his hair cut and the armor worn, Cass emerges back into the congregation, not as Cassiel nor as Frayne Illith, but as a wholly new person somewhere in between. Session 20. Cassiel, after reclaiming his old armor, donned it with pride. Reborn with a large fraction of his identity from his previous soul, the party to mourn the passing of Dagoth came to a steady close. That night, Tommet had a conversation with Octha about the implications of their giving of the ring, to which Octha responded that they're not entirely against the whole idea. Tommet, however, knew that Octha was going to be leaving with Cass and made a deal. Octha was to look after themselves and promise to return the ring to him the next time they meet. Octha agrees, and the two part on good terms. The following morning, Vexania returned to the party's side and informed them of the situation with Captain Judd. Repairs on the ship were made, and they're itching to return to the sea, since they pose as merchant traders, and missing their port at the city of Signestead would lead to suspicions of unfortunate run-ins with pirates or monsters, leading to a search party. The party, realizing they would need to leave soon, set off to accomplish the rest of their priorities. Octha, accompanied by Tomotaru, Redwood, and Thalmir, made way to the northern smaller islands to meet the spell scales living within the protection of the Dragonfire, while Sweet Daisy stayed with Cass to meet the rest of his family, the Purple Dragons. Flying on the back of Vexania, Octha and the others reach the island. The spell scales they meet, however, are very unlike the ones they're familiar with, seeming more like half-dragons than the largely humanoid appearance of those like Octha. The elder they met explains that thousands of years ago, a portion of the spell scales decided to leave Dragonfire Island, to see places and meet people beyond the sea. They were granted their wish, however, were barred from ever returning to the island for the Isle's safety. If Octha did have ancestry tracing back to the island, it would be far too thin to consider anything close to family. Octha, slightly disappointed, stayed and meditated on the island and felt more intensely connected with their heritage than ever before. Completing their last blood quickening for the year, the party left to return to the Artoran Blue Dragons to say a small goodbye to Bridget and her siblings. Meanwhile, Cass and Sweet Daisy spent their last day with Tommet and Andre, meeting the rest of the Purple Dragons. Unlike how he did with Tommet and Andre, however, Cass did not have quite the same recognition with them, realizing the loss they suffered during the war with the gods must have been much larger than he originally anticipated. Cass looked upon his family with solemn pride. going on a flight with Tomet and Andre to reconvene with the rest of their allies at the Bay of the Blue Dragons. Cass discovered a new ability granted to him by his Dragonfire, wings that allowed him to soar the skies on his own. After coming all together, Redwood met one last time with Erin, who had unfortunately turned down Redwood's offer to spar. She did, however, appreciate the origami flower given to her by Redwood after being pushed to by Tomotaru. She repaid him with a kiss on his cheek. With nothing else left, Cass said goodbye to his kids again and returned to the ship on the southern tip of the island. Granted a glimpse into his past and awakening to a golden beam of light from within, the fog was parted and the ship was allowed to pass it. The party caught one last glimpse of Vexania and the Dragonfire Island before the fog recedes around him, concealing the island once more.